Before we dive into today's incredible story, I've got a special request for you. If you love thrilling, emotional journeys like the one you're about to experience, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. This channel brings you more exciting stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Don't forget to like this video if you're ready for an adventure and comment below with your thoughts. Your feedback helps us create even better content, and it helps others find this amazing journey. The more you interact, the more people get to experience these stories. So let's grow this community together. Now, let's jump into the action. Enjoy the story. In the heart of the lush African kingdom of Immerse, Prince Nyatsi was revered for his wisdom and bravery. As the son of King Baobab and Queen Adama, his future was bound by royal duties and traditions. However, his heart had always been free, and he found solace in the company of his childhood friend, Jamilu. Jamilu was not only the prince's best friend, but also the man destined to marry the woman Nyatsi had quietly admired for years, the beautiful and intelligent Zainab. Zainab was promised to Jamilu in a union that was meant to strengthen the ties between two powerful families. But as the years passed, Nyatsi's feelings for her grew stronger, despite the unspoken rules of loyalty and friendship. The two of them, unbeknownst to Jamilu, began to share stolen moments of intimacy under the shade of the ancient Baobab tree. These secret rendezvous were dangerous, and yet, the intensity of their connection seemed impossible to resist. Nyatsi struggled with his growing feelings, but the pull of love, forbidden yet undeniable, was too powerful. As the days went by, the kingdom was preparing for the grand wedding between Jamilu and Zainab. It was a time of celebration, and the palace was adorned with vibrant colors and festive music. Yet, behind the shimmering facade of festivities, Nyatsi's heart was heavy with guilt. He knew that their affair was a lie, a web of deceit that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the kingdom's future. One evening, under the glow of the setting sun, a trusted servant named Iridi entered Nyatsi's chambers. She had noticed the prince's somber mood and the secretive nature of his actions. Iridi was a woman of great loyalty to the royal family, and although she held a deep affection for Nyatsi, she was bound by her own sense of duty. Her warning came in hushed tones. "My prince, the winds carry whispers. Your love for Zainab is not as secret as you think." Nyatsi brushed off her concern, convinced that no one could have discovered their secret. But deep down, he knew that the truth, like an unstoppable tide, was bound to emerge. The moment arrived when the forbidden affair was exposed, not by a wandering lover or jealous rival, but by a chance encounter. It was during the annual festival in the kingdom, when all the nobles and guests were gathered in the grand hall. Nyatsi and Zainab, lost in the depths of each other's eyes, were oblivious to the watchful eyes around them. As fate would have it, Jamilu entered the hall at that very moment, his gaze falling on his best friend and his promised bride, standing too close, their bodies touching with an intimacy that spoke volumes. His heart sank. The world around him blurred as a rush of emotions flooded his chest. Anger, betrayal, hurt, and confusion twisted his insides. He had always trusted Nyatsi, but now he saw the prince through the eyes of a man betrayed. Jamila's voice, cold and sharp, cut through the air. "Nyatsi, how could you? How could you betray me with her?" The room fell silent, every face turning to witness the eruption of the greatest betrayal in the kingdom's history. The repercussions of that fateful moment were swift and brutal. King Baobab, who had always regarded Nyatsi as his pride, was struck with disbelief and fury. The royal court, once full of laughter and festivity, became a place of whispered accusations and silent judgments. Queen Adama, heartbroken by the scandal, withdrew into seclusion, her eyes clouded with grief. Jamilu, consumed by pain, declared that he could never trust Nyatsi again. The prince, once adored by all, was now an outcast in his own home. The people of Immerse, who had sung praises for Nyatsi's courage and wisdom, now spoke of his deceit in hushed tones. Even the kingdom's elders, who had guided the royal family for generations, saw the affair as a stain that could not be washed away. Nyatsi found himself alone, isolated by the very choices that had once brought him joy. His affair with Zainab, which had been a stolen dream, now seemed like a curse that had ruined his life. As the days wore on, the weight of his actions began to sink in, and the prince realized the true cost of betrayal: the loss of trust, the crumbling of relationships, and the destruction of his future. As the kingdom of Amara began to settle into the aftermath of the scandal, Niazi's life took a sharp turn. Zainab, who had once been his lover, now stood at a distance. She, too, had been affected by the public outcry. The whispers of her affair with the prince had tarnished her reputation, and the people who once admired her now viewed her with contempt. Zainab's heart, torn between her loyalty to Jamilu and her love for Niazi, was now a battlefield. The prince had always been her soul's desire, but in the wake of the betrayal, she began to question whether the love they shared was worth the destruction it had caused. Jamilu, despite his anger, had vowed to reclaim the honor of his family. He severed all ties with Niazi, declaring that no bond of friendship could ever exist between them again. The kingdom's future, once bright and filled with promise, now seemed uncertain. Niazi, lost in the wreckage of his own making, wandered the palace grounds like a shadow of his former self. The once grand halls of his home now felt like cold, empty chambers. His every step was haunted by the faces of those he had wronged, and he realized too late that the price of his betrayal was the destruction of everything he had held dear. The days turned into weeks, and the kingdom of Amara seemed to fall under a somber shadow. Niazi's once vibrant presence in the palace had diminished, replaced by an unspoken silence that hung in the air. His father, King Bao, who had once been proud of his son, now regarded him with a coldness that cut deeper than any blade. Niazi's position as heir to the throne had been weakened, his name sullied by the scandal. The people of Amara, who had revered Niazi for his wisdom and valor, now whispered his name with scorn. His reputation, built over years of honorable service to his kingdom, had been reduced to mere gossip. The prince's heart ached, not just from the betrayal he had caused, but from the realization that his own people no longer saw him as a worthy leader. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but one that he had to face head-on. As Niazi sat alone in the royal gardens, staring at the flowers that once brought him peace, he understood the true cost of his actions. His love for Zainab had been selfish, a fleeting moment of passion that had torn apart everything he had ever known. He had betrayed not only Jamilu and his family but also the trust of the people who had looked to him for guidance. The silence that surrounded him was a reflection of the isolation he now felt. Zainab sat by the river that ran through the kingdom, the cool breeze tugging at her hair. The once joyous sound of the water flowing had become a constant reminder of the chaos that had unfolded. The affair with Niazi had been a secret she had carried with such joy, but now, it felt like a weight she could no longer bear. Her heart was torn between loyalty to Jamilu and the love she had for Niazi. Jamilu had always been kind, generous, and loving, and yet, she had betrayed him with the one person he trusted most. Zainab had not only betrayed him but had also betrayed herself, caught in a passion that had seemed so pure in the moment but now felt like a shadow that haunted her every waking hour. As she stood by the river, Zainab made a decision. She would leave Amara. She could not face the people who had once admired her, nor could she live with the guilt of the destruction she had caused. Her heart, though still filled with love for Niazi, knew that the only way to begin healing was to distance herself from the kingdom and the people who would forever see her as the woman who had torn apart the royal family. Niazi had not seen Zainab for days, and each day that passed without her presence felt like an eternity. He wandered the palace halls in a daze, each step echoing with the loss of everything he had once held dear. The guilt that had taken root in his heart grew stronger with every passing hour. He had allowed love to blind him, and now he was paying the ultimate price. As he sat in the throne room, his father, King Bao, entered with a look of disappointment that cut through Niazi like a knife. "You have betrayed everything we stand for," the king's voice boomed, his words reverberating through the cold stone walls. "Your actions have not only torn apart your future but also the future of this kingdom. You have brought shame upon our name, and there is nothing I can do to undo the damage." Niazi's heart sank, the weight of his father's words almost too much to bear. The realization that his actions had led to this moment of reckoning filled him with a deep sorrow. He had let down everyone who had trusted him, and now there was no turning back. The consequences of his betrayal were far-reaching, and he would carry the burden of regret for the rest of his life. As Niazi struggled with his emotions, the kingdom's enemies began to take notice of the turmoil within the royal family. Rivals, who had long coveted the throne, saw this as an opportunity to strike. The news of the prince's betrayal had weakened the royal family's position, and the once stable kingdom of Amara now seemed vulnerable. Jamalu, despite his anger and hurt, knew that the kingdom's future was at stake. He realized that his personal feelings could not overshadow the larger threat that loomed over their land. He approached King Bao with a proposal to strengthen the kingdom's defenses, offering his loyalty to the throne despite the personal betrayal. King Bao, though still heartbroken by his son's actions, understood the importance of unity in the face of external threats. He begrudgingly accepted Jamalu's offer and began to form alliances with neighboring kingdoms to fortify Amara's defenses. Niatsi, though still outcast, was summoned to meet with Jamalu. The two men, once inseparable, now stood on opposite sides of a chasm created by betrayal. Niatsi stood at the gates of the palace, looking out over the vast kingdom of Amara. The world before him seemed different, as if he were seeing it for the first time. He had lost so much: his family's trust, his position as heir to the throne, and his love for Zainab. Yet, in the quiet moments of reflection, he realized that he still had a chance to redeem himself. The road to redemption would not be easy, but Niatsi knew that it was the only path left to him. He would have to confront the mistakes he had made, not just to seek forgiveness from those he had wronged, but to find a way to rebuild the broken bonds that once held the kingdom together. With a deep breath, Niatsi turned away from the palace gates. He knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but it was a journey he had to undertake if he hoped to regain the trust of his people and, perhaps, to find peace within himself. Niatsi spent the following weeks isolated from the palace, retreating to the quiet village at the kingdom's edge. Here, far from the palace intrigue and the whispers of betrayal, he tried to focus on a single task: understanding the true meaning of leadership. His father, King Bao, had always told him that ruling was not about power, but about serving the people. It was a lesson Niatsi had taken for granted. Now, with the kingdom at risk, he began to see the wisdom in his father's words. In the village, Niatsi spoke with the common folk: farmers, traders, and elders. He asked them about their needs, their struggles, and their hopes for the future. It was a humbling experience for the prince, who had once been surrounded by opulence and luxury. The villagers, though initially cautious, began to see him not as the prince who had betrayed his family, but as a young man searching for redemption. The more Niatsi listened, the more he understood that true leadership came from humility, sacrifice, and most importantly, trust. After weeks of reflection and learning, Niatsi returned to the palace, his resolve hardened. He knew that the path to healing would not be easy, but he was ready to take the first steps toward earning back the trust he had lost. The external threat to Amara grew stronger as neighboring kingdoms began to move against them. With the royal family divided, their enemies saw an opportunity to seize power. Jamalu, though still filled with anger and hurt, recognized the importance of unity in the face of this new danger. One evening, after a tense meeting with the council, Jamalu sought out Niatsi. The prince, who had been working tirelessly to rebuild relationships with the villagers and his father, was caught off guard when his former friend approached him. "I never thought I would come to you for help," Jamalu began, his voice low and weary. "But the kingdom needs you, Niatsi. I know you have wronged me, and I can never forget that. But I also know that Amara needs all of us now." Niatsi was stunned, but he could see the truth in Jamalu's eyes. The two men had once been brothers, and though their bond had been shattered by betrayal, there was still a glimmer of hope that they could rebuild it. "I'm willing to fight for Amara, Jamalu," Niatsi replied, his voice steady. "I owe it to the people of this kingdom to do whatever it takes." Jamalu nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. The road to redemption was long, but it was a road they would now walk together. As Niatsi and Jamalu worked together to strengthen the kingdom's defenses, the prince's thoughts often drifted back to Zainab. Her absence weighed heavily on his heart, and every reminder of her only served to deepen his regret. The love they had shared had once been a bright flame, but now it felt like a distant memory, a beautiful illusion shattered by the harsh realities of their actions. One day, as Niatsi sat alone in the royal gardens, he heard a familiar voice calling his name. He turned, his heart skipping a beat, to find Zainab standing at the edge of the garden, her figure framed by the setting sun. Her eyes, once filled with passion and hope, now held a sadness that mirrored his own. "Niatsi," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt anyone." Niatsi stood, his breath caught in his throat. The sight of her brought a rush of emotions, regret, love, sorrow. Zainab, He didn't know what to say. The words felt inadequate, meaningless in the face of the destruction they had caused. Zainab took a step closer, her expression torn. I don't know what to do anymore. I've lost everything. My reputation, my future, and you. Niazi's heart broke at her words. He wanted to reach out to her, to hold her and tell her that it would all be okay, but he knew that nothing could ever erase the pain they had caused. I have nothing left to offer you, Zainab, he said softly. Not anymore. She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I know. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Niazi standing in the garden, once again alone with the consequences of his actions. The tension in Immerse continued to rise as the kingdom's enemies drew closer. King Bao, though still grieving his son's betrayal, knew that the time had come to act. He called a meeting with his council, and for the first time in months, Niazi was invited to join. The king's eyes were heavy with years of wisdom and sorrow as he addressed his son. Niazi, I have watched you struggle, and I have seen your remorse. You have much to atone for, but now is not the time for apologies. Immerse is at war, and I need you to fight for this kingdom. You have learned the true meaning of leadership, and now it is time for you to prove it. Niazi, though humbled by his father's words, felt the weight of the moment. The kingdom that had once been his to rule was now on the brink of destruction, and it was up to him to protect it. He looked around the room at the faces of those who had once supported him and knew that they were counting on him once again. I will fight for Immerse, Niazi vowed, his voice filled with determination. I will do whatever it takes. With that, the meeting ended, and Niazi set to work preparing for the battle that would determine the future of Immerse. He had lost much, but he was willing to give everything to save his kingdom. As the kingdom prepared for war, the external threat loomed closer. Immerse's enemies, seeing the division within the royal family, had grown bolder, launching raids on the kingdom's borders. The people of Immerse, who had once trusted Niazi, now looked to him with mixed emotions. Some hoped that he would redeem himself, while others viewed him with suspicion and distrust. Jamalu, though still carrying the weight of his personal betrayal, fought alongside Niazi. Together, they strategized, planned, and gathered their forces. The battle would be fierce, and the outcome uncertain. Niazi knew that this was his chance to prove himself, to redeem not only his honor but the honor of the royal family. But as the storm of war approached, he also knew that the greatest battle he would face would not be on the battlefield, but within himself. As the days leading up to the battle grew shorter, Niazi found himself battling not only external forces but also the storm within his own heart. He was torn between the man he used to be and the man he now aspired to become. The weight of his betrayal was a constant presence, gnawing at him with each decision he made. Though he had vowed to fight for the kingdom, a part of him wondered if he was worthy of redemption. The night before the battle, Niazi sat alone in his quarters, his thoughts clouded with doubt. His father's words echoed in his mind, "Now is not the time for apologies." But for Niazi, the need to apologize, to make amends for the destruction he had caused, weighed heavily on him. Could he truly lead the kingdom to victory when his own soul was fractured? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. When he opened it, he found Jamalu standing in the doorway, his face hard, his eyes reflecting the turmoil that Niazi knew all too well. I never thought we'd be here, Niazi, Jamalu said quietly. But the kingdom needs us, even if we don't deserve it. Niazi nodded, his throat tight. I don't deserve your trust, Jamalu. I betrayed you in the worst possible way. Jamalu looked at him for a long moment before speaking again. No one is perfect, Niazi. We've both made our mistakes. But if we don't fight for Immerse now, then none of it matters. We have a duty to the people, to this kingdom. I won't carry the burden of your betrayal any longer. But I will fight alongside you for our kingdom's future. Niazi felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. For the first time in what felt like forever, he felt a glimmer of hope. There was still a chance for redemption, a chance to fight for something greater than himself. He clasped Jamala's hand. Thank you, my brother. I will not let you down again.